Hi, everyone, and welcome to Learn English at Ease. We are Linda and John, and we are so excited you're here with us.
We really are. It is great to have you listening today.
So, today's deep dive is about a feeling I think literally every single person listening has experienced. You are standing in the kitchen, or maybe you're sitting in the passenger seat of a car, and you are right in the middle of this high stakes, stressful conversation with someone you care deeply about.
Oh, I know that exact feeling. Your heart is just pounding.
Oh, exactly. You can physically feel your heart racing.
Hmm.
The cortisol is flooding your system. You feel absolutely everything, anger, sadness, maybe just profound confusion, but you completely lack the right words to actually express it.
And your mind just goes totally blank.
Right. Or even worse, you panic and you say exactly the wrong thing and you just watch the whole conversation go up in flames. And for our learners out there, when we say something goes up in flames, we mean it gets completely ruined or destroyed very quickly.
It's a great idiom and a terrible experience to live through. But hey, before we dive into the details on how to fix that communication breakdown, we have a small favor to ask you. If you want to support us and keep improving your English every single week, please hit that subscribe button right now. It really, really helps our channel grow.
Yes, please do. We love our community here. So, John, back to that kitchen argument. Today, we're talking about what we like to call the new vocabulary of connection. We are moving past basic English and looking at how nuanced, high-level language is the absolute key to navigating the messy reality of modern relationships.
It is such a universal experience, Linda. And I think it's particularly acute right now. We desperately want to be understood, but the language we reflexively choose in those high-stress moments, uh, it often ends up pushing the other person further away.
Totally. We think we are protecting ourselves, right?
Exactly. We think we're putting up a shield, but really, we're just causing genuine connection to slip right through our fingers. It's not just about memorizing a bigger vocabulary list. It's about understanding how words can bridge that massive gap between feeling totally misunderstood and achieving true emotional connection.
Okay, so let's unpack this because to understand how to communicate better, I think we first have to look at what we are currently doing so wrong.
Oh, there is plenty we are doing wrong.
Right. And a huge part of this is the trap of what people call therapy speak. I mean, you can't scroll through social media for 2 minutes these days without seeing someone diagnosing their ex.
Yeah, that is so true. What's fascinating here is how quickly clinical terminology migrated from the psychologist's office to just our everyday vernacular. People are throwing around words like toxic or, gaslighting, narcissist, or avoidant to describe very standard everyday friction.
Let's actually pause there for our listeners because gaslighting is a very popular advanced word right now. It basically means manipulating someone psychologically so that they start to doubt their own sanity or memory.
Perfect definition.
Hmm?
And while clinical definitions like gaslighting are incredibly useful in an actual clinical setting, they completely fail you when you are just in the heat of a complex argument with your partner. You need a much more sophisticated lived experience vocabulary to articulate what you are actually feeling.
But wait, I want to introduce a bit of friction here because I've heard a really valid counterargument. Some people point out that therapy speak has actually been incredibly empowering for marginalized people or people in genuinely abusive situations
Oh, absolutely.
because they finally have the precise vocabulary to name what is happening to them. So how do we reconcile that undeniable benefit with the idea that these words are somehow ruining casual intimacy?
Well, that is a crucial distinction. When someone is dealing with actual abuse or severe psychological manipulation, clinical terms are vital tools for survival. They allow a person to objectively categorize unacceptable behavior, right?
Right, so they can finally seek help.
Exactly. The problem we are highlighting today is the dilution of those terms in standard healthy relationships. When we take the heavy machinery of psychological diagnosis and apply it to a mundane argument about who forgot to pay the electric bill, It breaks the relationship down.
You're essentially bringing a surgical scalpel to a pillow fight.
Yeah. Yes.
It's just the completely wrong tool for the environment. So let's look at the mechanics of why this backfires. If I'm frustrated with my partner because they've been distant all week, and I look at them and say, you are displaying avoidant attachment behaviors, what is actually happening in their brain?
Physiologically and psychologically, you're triggering an immediate threat response. By using a clinical term, you are making an objective claim about their character. You aren't saying, I am hurting. You are saying, you are fundamentally broken and I have diagnosed you.
Oh, wow, I've never thought about it like that.
Right. The moment someone feels psychoanalyzed by their romantic partner, their amygdala fires up. They feel like a patient under a microscope. So they immediately stop listening to your pain and start litigating the facts of your diagnosis. They feel like they have to defend their character.
That makes total sense. Using clinical terms is a form of passive observation. You are acting like a detached scientist observing a specimen from behind a pane of glass, rather than an active, vulnerable participant in a shared relationship.
Which is why we need to shift toward nuanced, lived experience storytelling. Instead of diagnosing the other person, you describe a subjective internal state. You say, when we don't spend time together in the evenings, I feel incredibly lonely and disconnected.
And the mechanism at play here is undeniable subjectivity. Your partner cannot argue with your loneliness.
Exactly. They can argue about whether they are quote-unquote avoidant, but they cannot tell you that you aren't feeling sad.
Because feelings aren't up for debate?
Precisely. The clinical phrase creates immense emotional distance. But lived experience language defines a passing feeling, and feelings can change. By focusing on the feeling, you actually invite your partner into a shared reality to help solve the problem.
Okay, but avoiding therapy speak doesn't mean you just let people walk all over you. You still have to protect your own well-being. And that leads us perfectly into the concept of boundaries. But I think we are messing this up too. We're using the language of boundaries when what we are really building are walls.
I'm so glad you brought this up. The distortion of the word boundary is one of the most glaring examples of language gone wrong in modern intimacy. People use it as a trump card to shut down uncomfortable conversations.
A trump card. Good phrase.
Yeah.
That means using something to gain an unfair advantage or just instantly win a situation.
Right. They say, I'm setting a boundary as a way to unilaterally dictate the terms of a relationship without any collaboration at all.
I was thinking about this the other day, and I came up with an analogy that helped it click for me. A wall is designed to be an absolute barrier to entry. It's made of stone, it has barbed wire on top, and its only job is to keep everyone out.
Sure.
But a healthy boundary is much more like a bridge. Its ultimate goal is actually to allow safe crossing and facilitate connection. If a boundary is a bridge, then the rules are just the traffic lights. You aren't closing the road, you're just controlling the speed and the flow of the interaction so nobody crashes.
I love that. That bridge analogy captures the exact linguistic shift we need. Think about the restrictive language of walls versus the constructive vocabulary of limits. A wall uses absolute adversarial language like, never speak to me like that, or if you bring this up again, I'm leaving.
It positions the two of you as enemies in a zero-sum game.
Right, a zero-sum game
Right.
where if one person wins, the other person has to lose. The language is designed to sever the connection entirely.
But a bridge uses collaborative language. It's about articulating your non-negotiables, the things you genuinely cannot accept for your own mental health without sounding confrontational. But John, how do we actually do that in real time? How do you enforce a limit while still keeping the bridge open?
Well, it requires practicing real-time scripts that prioritize connection even in the middle of a conflict. Let's say an argument is getting incredibly heated. Instead of the wall-building phrase, stop yelling at me, I'm setting a boundary and I'm walking away, you use a bridge-building script.
Okay, like what?
You might say, I really want to hear what you're saying because it's important, but I literally cannot process it when the volume is this loud. Let's take a 10-minute pause to reset and then come back to this.
Oh, that is brilliant. You're giving them the instruction manual for safe crossing. You were telling them, I want you to reach me, but you have to drive the speed limit to get here.
Exactly. That completely shifts the dynamic from adversarial to collaborative. And notice the vocabulary used in that script. Words like process, pause, reset. It takes advanced emotional intelligence to master those descriptors. You are validating their need to be heard while firmly protecting your need for a calm environment.
You aren't shutting them out. You are managing the environment so that intimacy can actually survive the conflict.
Right. But here's where it gets really interesting, Linda. Building that bridge and standing on it is completely impossible without vulnerability. And that brings us to the terrifying concept of emotional exposure.
It is terrifying.
It really is. People constantly confuse being guarded with being vulnerable. And when we confuse them, genuine connection slips away. We think we are communicating our deepest truths, but we are actually just presenting a highly polished, heavily armored version of our feelings.
Okay, I have to push back a little bit here on behalf of anyone listening who has ever been burned in a relationship. Isn't it just fundamental human nature to protect the ego? Like, when our partner hits a raw nerve, which means touching on a very sensitive emotional subject, our biological instinct is to put our guard up.
Oh, absolutely. It's completely natural.
So how do we actually know through the language we are using when we are just posturing defensively versus being genuinely open?
That is the million-dollar question. And the key is looking at the subtle structural and phonetic differences in our language. Language that protects the ego is almost always highly intellectualized. It uses abstract nouns, passive voice, and really long, complex words to sanitize the raw emotion.
So it's a way of talking about your feelings without actually feeling them.
Exactly. It sounds like a corporate HR email. Something like, I am currently experiencing a sense of frustration regarding your ongoing lack of time management, which is impacting our mutual scheduling.
Oh my goodness, yes, I've definitely done that. It sounds incredibly mature on the surface. It sounds like you are communicating perfectly.
But it's completely guarded. It protects the ego because the speaker sounds totally in control, entirely rational, and completely above the messiness of human emotion. The problem is, you cannot connect with a corporate HR email.
No, you really can't. So what does the language of true emotional exposure actually look like?
It is structurally much simpler, but emotionally much heavier. It relies on active verbs and primary direct adjectives. Instead of that long HR sentence, true emotional exposure sounds like, I felt hurt and I felt completely forgotten when you didn't show up on time.
Oh, it just strips away all the armor, doesn't it? You aren't hiding behind the concept of time management. You are standing there saying, I am hurt, I am lonely.
And this raises an important question about why we avoid this. The transition from intellectualized language to emotional exposure is terrifying. It requires sheer discomfort because you are actively removing the linguistic armor that makes you feel safe.
Right, because when you use primary emotional words, hurt, scared, lonely, sad, you are handing the other person the power to wound you.
You are. But you are also handing them the only key that can actually comfort you. If you don't show them the real wound, they can't help you heal it.
That is such a powerful way to look at it. So what does this all mean for the actual friction in our relationships? Because once you drop that corporate HR guard, once you are totally vulnerable, you inevitably enter into the messy, complicated friction of the relationship.
Right, what a lot of psychologists call the messy middle of modern friction. It's that phase of an argument where both people are emotionally exposed, the guard is down, and the actual conflict has to be resolved.
And this is particularly dangerous in our digital era because so much of our relationship conflict happens over text messages now, where vocal tone, facial expressions, and body language are completely stripped away.
Texting during an argument is a literal nightmare. The nuances of language get completely flattened out on a glowing screen, and everyone assumes the absolute worst possible tone.
Always. So how do we survive this messy middle? How do we use precise vocabulary to bridge the gap between feeling completely misunderstood and actually being heard?
Well, it requires deconstructing the blanket statements we default to when we are overwhelmed. When we are in the messy middle, we tend to use blurry, generalized terminology. You always ignore me. I'm just really upset. You never listen.
Yeah, the classic always and never statements.
Exactly. To resolve the friction, we have to hunt for extreme precision. Upset is too broad. We have to dig deeper into the vocabulary. Are you feeling dismissed? Are you feeling overwhelmed? Are you feeling undervalued?
The specificity of the vocabulary is the superpower here, because upset is like a blurry, out-of-focus photograph. It doesn't tell your partner what to fix, but undervalued is a high-definition 4K image of exactly what is wrong.
I love that comparison.
If I tell you I feel undervalued, you know exactly what kind of reassurance I need. And there is a concept regarding this that I absolutely love. Have you ever heard of the connection pivot?
Yes. The connection pivot is arguably one of the most actionable frameworks you can learn. It's a strategy for catching yourself in the middle of a downward spiral and completely changing the trajectory of the conversation. And a downward spiral just means a situation that is rapidly getting worse and worse.
Right. But how do we actually execute this pivot? Let's get really granular here. If you are in the kitchen, your heart is racing, you are in the middle of a huge discussion about the future of a partnership, and you suddenly realize you are building a wall and using therapy speak, how do you swap out that technical armor for soulful, connective language right in the heat of the moment?
The key to executing the connection pivot is understanding the physical and psychological steps. First, you have to recognize the physiological signs in your own body, the racing heart, the tight chest.
That's your cue that your ego is taking over.
Exactly. The pivot itself requires you to literally stop mid-sentence. You take a breath, which helps regulate your nervous system, and you audibly call out your own defense mechanism. You say, wait, let me start over. I'm using big words right now because I'm scared. What I really mean is...
That takes my breath away a little bit. I am using big words because I am scared. That is the ultimate emotional exposure. You are actively narrating your own vulnerability in real time.
You are disarming your own ego out loud, which instantly signals to your partner's brain that they don't need to be defensive either.
Right. Think about the physical action of a pivot in sports. You are keeping one foot firmly planted on the ground, which represents your commitment to the relationship, while you turn your body in a completely new direction.
By admitting your fear, you pivot away from the intellectual armor and step directly into a space where true intimacy can happen. And executing this pivot regularly creates a framework for ongoing emotional maintenance.
Emotional maintenance. It's like changing the oil in a car, but for human connection.
Yes. We have to view our evolving emotional needs not as a relationship failure, but as a natural growth phase. As personal and social dynamics change over the years, your vocabulary has to remain fluid. You have to actively keep updating your language to reflect who you both are becoming. A phrase or a boundary that worked perfectly for you 2 years ago might not serve you today.
It is exactly like upgrading the operating system on your phone. You cannot run a 2026 relationship on a 2016 vocabulary. The software will just crash. You have to download the new language packs as your lives get more complicated.
That is a perfect synthesis of the overarching theme here, Linda. The complexity of our language has to scale with the complexity of our lives.
So, to pull all of these threads together for you listening today, mastering the vocabulary of connection is definitely not about memorizing clinical definitions so you can diagnose your partner.
No, definitely not.
It's not about throwing around buzzwords to win an argument. It is about actively auditing your own language. It's shifting away from the passive observation of a detached scientist and stepping directly into the active, vulnerable participation of a real partner.
It is about building bridges with clear traffic lights instead of impenetrable walls, and having the sheer courage to sit in the intense discomfort of true emotional exposure.
It is about hunting for the precise words to navigate the messy middle, so you don't just feel deeply, but you are actually understood deeply. The right words don't just describe our reality, they actively construct it.
They really do. And that leaves me with a final thought that I want you all to really mull over
Oh,
today.
please, let's hear it.
Well, if our emotional needs are constantly evolving, and if the words we use literally shape the reality of our relationships, how might the language of intimacy change in the next decade? When we look ahead to 2036, are our fast-paced, highly curated digital communication habits pushing us toward a much deeper, more articulate level of connection?
Or are we just inventing increasingly sophisticated, highly intellectualized ways of hiding from each other in plain sight?
Exactly.
Oh, wow. Are words revealing us, or are they just becoming a much better hiding place? What a profound question to leave off on. If you're listening to this, I hope it gives you as much to think about as it gave us.
Take a hard look at the words you choose the next time you're standing in the kitchen, feeling everything at once.
Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. Don't forget to leave a comment with your thoughts on today's topic. We would love to read them. And make sure to check out our next episode to keep learning and improving your English.
Keep exploring the messy, beautiful nuance of human connection, everyone. Bye for now.
See you next time.